welcome to another edition of Sounding Board, our second visual edition. It's going to be going on YouTube. You may notice, obviously not if you're listening on the podcast, but we've moved around a little bit. Now that you can see us, we're experimenting with where we are.
With our visuals.
We're still in the same room, but there was a bit too much table last time.
We're just playing around with this.
So we've moved around.
We're not Joe Rogan yet.
No, not quite. So Nick, you mentioned the other day that it's almost 30 years since the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Yeah, I think it's like the 8th of November or something. So it's only a couple of days' time. And yeah, that's quite a significant one. I thought 30 years. Partly I thought we should talk about it because we've often spoken about how we think we're kind of the end of a kind of golden era, a golden age of people that remember the fall of communism, and that it happened during our lifetime. I was a bit young. I was 9, but this is something that happened in our lifetimes. The end of the Cold War happened in our lifetimes, and we saw the immediate aftermath. And what happened with Germany specifically, but also with the Soviet Union. And it's all but forgotten, isn't it?
Well, I think so. Kids
of today,
kids these days, but they don't have anything similar. Like you say, we kind of grew up in this kind of the golden age where you had we grew up in this kind of analog age, but then everything digital kind of came later. So we got that one kind of transition where kind of suddenly everything was kind of moving to computers and to phones, but we experienced both. And it feels a little bit like that in that we experienced a world that still had socialism and communism in the USSR and East Germany. And then there was that defining point again in the sort of late 80s, early 90s where these kind of Eastern Bloc countries were breaking away and they were moving towards capitalism. And it was close to us. It was in Europe, So these days, you've got like in North Korea and Venezuela and Cuba and places.
They're all so far away,
miles away. So you don't know people who have experienced it. You've got everything is kind of second or third hand. Whereas East Germany was around the corner, and even Russia wasn't too far away, and these Eastern Bloc countries weren't too far away. Do you remember when it came down there? Because obviously you were a bit younger than me. But
I do, and the anecdote I'll say is that I remember it being on the TV. It being on the TV because our parents were watching it on the TV, and asking. I think I'd always been aware. That Germany was this odd country. In fact, I'll tell you where that came. That came from football World Cups.
Oh yeah, well,
I remember West Germany.
Yeah, I remember.
Because why is there a West Germany? Why is there an East Germany thing?
Because I remember the West German team because I used to really like West Germany.
Yeah.
So there was like Lothar Matthäus and Rudi Völler and these.
I can remember the strip right now. Yeah. And so there was that existed, and we had to.
Well, I was collecting football stickers at the time, which you probably remember.
Yeah. But the key thing I remember is Dad turning to me and saying, "This is such an important moment in history." He had that proper hand of history moment, and he said, like you're going to want to know where you were when this happened because this is big. And so I just remember not really understanding it, but trying to take in everything I possibly could about it. And it's arguably one of those early political moments that kind of shaped the way you think. That and David Hasselhoff was singing.
Well, so I was gonna mention that. Do you remember? Because he was standing on top of the Berlin Wall. He had like a leather jacket with light bulbs on it.
There was a few things because
light bulbs are flashing. He was singing.
There was another one where he was on like a cherry picker. Did you see that one?
I don't remember.
Where a firework nearly hits him. There's like a shot. There's like fireworks.
Because the song he was singing was like "Looking for Freedom" or something, wasn't it? It was a proper, a proper song for the moment.
Yeah.
He was. So David Hasselhoff was certainly when I was a kid, he was the coolest man alive.
Yeah.
By a large margin.
This is for us. It was, Knight Rider was one of our absolute
Well,
favourite
yeah,
shows.
because I mean, there were a few. There was like Knight Rider, there was Airwolf, there was Street Hawk, and there was the A-Team and stuff. And a few of them had like guys who were reasonably cool. I can't remember the guy from Street Hawk. Airwolf, there was Jan Michael Vincent, wasn't there? It was Stringfellow Hawk. And do you know what happened to him?
No.
It's really sad actually. So he was a real pretty boy, but had like a masculine kind of look about him as well. A bit like like you got like people like Clint Eastwood, where you see him as a youngster, he's really good looking as a model.
Yeah.
Still had this kind of masculinity about him. So he was like that. I think he was a model as well. He was he's really really good shape. Proper Hollywood material. And then obviously he did a few films. He did Airwolf and stuff. But he became a drug addict, and I think he became homeless a couple of times. I think it was heroin and other kind of serious drugs. Ended up having his leg chopped off.
Oh, blimey!
And he died a couple of years ago. And he was, you would not recognise him. He just was like emaciated. He was, penniless. Really, really sad story.
Yeah.
But anyway, of all that lot, Michael Knight, David Hasselhoff was just he was the
tall,
man.
bubble perm.
Yeah, amazing.
Them were the days. But yeah, that period of time, and I remember, again, early political memories, obviously remembering elections and things happening. I remember that, and then within a couple of years, the Gulf War. Those are the kind of things that I remember.
Yeah, because I remember the '87 election.
Yes,
that was probably the first election that I really got into.
Yeah, I would have been 6 at that one. But the only thing I can remember is waking up the next morning saying, "Did we win? Did we win?" And then being really glad. This is back in days of just being in the house and it being, no, you can't let these socialists in.
Well, yeah, because I remember. We'd watch Spitting Image and stuff, and there'd be
probably when we were too young.
And I remember Mum and Dad being, warning us about Kinnock and Scargill, and
yes,
who was the guy who used to, in the Spitting Image, used to spray
Roy Hattersley.
Roy Hattersley, these people, saying that they're the scariest men in Britain. I remember them saying that. And anyway, in the '87 election, I remember. With specifically being at school, and we were talking about the election because it was like the first one where we were kind of old enough to really know what was going on, or at least a point.
Yeah.
And
you were like 9, 10 at this point.
Yeah. And we were talking about the election, in the coming kind of weeks and days leading up to it, and. My teacher was as they all are, but you didn't know at the time, was a mad lefty.
Yeah.
To the point where
well, less so then, but yeah.
Yeah, to the point where she had Labour, posters, in her windows and
right.
that kind of thing. And this, I think, so looking back, this was probably the start of my distrust of teachers as well, because I used to think teachers knew everything. I'm like, they're teachers.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to Dad about this, about saying, why is she voting Labour? She's a teacher. Surely, she should. Is Labour the right people? Are Labour the right people to vote for?
Yeah.
And Dad's like, no, all teachers are left wing, and they don't really know much anyway. But anyway, on the day of the election, when we won, myself and all my friends, we were all really happy because obviously all our mum and dads were, they were conservative voters. Yeah. And because we live in a reasonably conservative area. So we were
in a very safe seat.
Yeah, so we were all saying, yes, we won, and we were kind of cheering, and because obviously everyone's mum and dad was happy. And just our teacher kind of came around, right, we are not saying a single word about the election, that's it. And we got banned. We got banned from mentioning it, even talking about it. So of course we did.
Do you remember anything at school about the fall of the Berlin Wall then?
No, I remember watching it at home. I remember. So
me too.
And this was something that I didn't realise about you until recently, or as I say about you. So I remember talking about the Berlin Wall reasonably recently with you, and I sort of said I originally thought that it was because you were taught about East Germany and West Germany, and you were taught about the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
So I thought the Berlin Wall was just a wall that went through Berlin and was around all of East Germany.
The assumption that Berlin was somehow on the border.
That's
where they drew.
Yeah. And so there was this border that went all the way around.
Yeah.
but it was, it started and finished in Berlin or whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't until after that when I kind of researched myself. I was like, hold up a second, there was a definite East and West Germany, but East Germany had.
But Berlin had.
But then obviously
as well.
they kind of they divided it up into four, but obviously the three were.
And that's certainly that.
Because I didn't realise that until later.
It was probably only 7 or 8 years ago that I really, and this is reading Cold War books, understanding that Germany was split into four, and so you got the UK, US, and French basically quarters, and Stalin's bit. And then we obviously went, well, we'll manage this together because we're friends, and that's why the other bit was left. But yeah, the Berlin bit specifically, I as a child, that to me, I didn't know the difference.
No, I didn't.
But then also understanding the when they tried to starve them out, the Westerners in Berlin, when you got the airdrops, them trying to come in and. They've obviously got to fly over. There's an isolation there. They've got to fly over East Germany to get to West Berlin, and all this happening. It's all before our time. But the fact that Checkpoint Charlie existed in our lifetime, and
I stayed just down the road from Checkpoint Charlie.
Did you?
When I went to Berlin. And it was.
I've never been. I really want to.
Yeah, it was amazing, and it was. So we, obviously we kind of, you do the tours, and we had. I remember doing a tour in these little kind of Trabant cars that you kind of drive around, and you get a guy who's like, communicating with you, like walkie-talkie, and he's telling you, kind of driving around Berlin. He's telling you all the different stories, and we did quite a lot of walking around.
Are there proper monuments there? Is there
yeah. There's like a Holocaust memorial, and there's all sorts, and then you obviously get to see bits of the wall, and bring bits of the wall back. And but it was, and I remember going out in the evenings, and there just I don't know if it's. I'm sure it wasn't just me, but there seemed to be like an air of freedom still. And that was probably 20 years after this, 10 or so years ago.
Yeah,
a bit longer, but there was still like an air of freedom about the whole place, and that they're still, they're going and they're playing punk rock music and stuff, and they're just happy to be free now. I mean, and what was really handy, I was there with a few friends, and one of them was I won't name drop, but he's a reasonably significant rock guitarist who.
I know who you mean. But
yeah. You probably wouldn't recognise in the street, but you'd play one of his songs, everyone would know them. And he toured around the world, and he loved Berlin, so we kind of sort of met him over there, and he kind of showed us around and showed us all these great places to see bands and live music and everything, and it was incredible. Really, you've got to go. So.
Yeah, no, I do want to. I suppose coming back to your point about the youth of today not having something similar. I suppose the event and then events that happened afterwards, and we're talking 10 plus years, that have defined this age, if you like, have more been terrorist events, and so I don't like saying 9/11 because I never liked it as a term. It seemed like a really lazy thing to say. The September the 11th bombings, whatever you want to call it, because the point is, it wasn't just the Twin Towers; it was the Pentagon as well, and there was obviously that another downplane. But that there are obviously people who missed out on the era we're talking about and fell into this one. And the point is that there was a very large scale deployment of troops that happened after that, in terms of Afghanistan and Iraq, and that lasted for years. Still really kind of still going on in many ways. Then you've got London bombings. Then you've got other places in the world getting hit as well. Then you've got France repeatedly and Belgium more recently. And so it feels like even though the IRA existed when we were kids, and I certainly remember. In fact, there was a day when a bomb went off in the street near Canary Wharf. I'm trying to think of what year that would have been. I was still at primary school, so this would have still been in the 80s, I would think.
Yeah, definitely.
Because one of my friends' dad's car. He was like, well, we got the newspaper, and he was like, that's my dad's car, which had all its windows smashed in and all this kind of stuff.
I remember the 7/7 bombings, and managed, because I was going into work on the Central Line. Because I'd stayed over with Julie, so I was kind of going in from Essex. At the start of the Central Line, all the way into Central London.
Yeah.
And I remember going through I went through the stations, a couple of the stations that, at least one of the stations that was blown up. And, I remember going in and think, you obviously realise what's happened afterwards. Not being able to get hold of anybody.
Yeah.
I remember you managed to get hold of me. It's the only way I could get online, because our text messages weren't coming through. None of that. So I remember logging onto
World of Warcraft. That's how I got hold of you.
That was the only way I could get messages to people.
Yeah.
And I remember a friend who I was working with, who so we'd managed to get into, and obviously it was taking ages to get into work, but we all managed to get in eventually. And one of the guys still wasn't around, and he managed to get through. And I remember him being on the phone to the guy next to me. We were sort of, listening and just checking. He was like, "Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just about to catch a bus." And then suddenly there's this explosion, and he's, "Okay, maybe not that bus." It was literally just right behind him,
Crazy.
50 yards behind him when the bus exploded. Everything was just so close to home.
Yeah.
It's just,
and that's the change, isn't it? We went from Cold War to the war on terror, which has kind of continued to define now, and Iraq War, Afghanistan, all of.
Because I remember the first Iraq War as well. That was the because I was a bit too young to really know about the Falklands. I was just a little bit too young, but the Iraq War, it was like the first war. Because you'd studied, World War I and World War II.
It's a very short war,
that kind of stuff. But I remember when it started, being actually really curious and thinking, we're finally at war. I've never been at war before. Well, not really. And I remember reading newspapers. I remember taking a little pocket radio into school, and I was kind of we had a little headphone, and I was kind of sort of listening to the news at school, and I was shouting through my like this, and having to try and work out what was going on. And I remember kind of seeing little maps in newspapers and showing where where everyone was and where the troops were going. And when was that? 91?
91. I remember we went on holiday to Hunstanton. And we just spent the week poring over the newspapers.
Yeah.
Because it was happening right then.
Yeah. And obviously we were a bit older with the September 11th bombings as well. I was at work.
Yeah.
For a few years.
But I wonder whether that there was a clear enemy, and Hollywood, the making of film and TV, always shapes the era as well, doesn't it? And
Hollywood, it was the communists, wasn't it? It was the Reds.
Absolutely.
They were the enemy. They were evil.
But it was very specifically, it was Soviet, and it was Russia. Russia bad. Anyone with a Russian accent in a film was the bad guy. And I mean, it almost sounds funny talking about it now, because now, the poor Russian people who I just referred to as Russia bad. Russia is bad again now. The poor, the average, I was going to say Joe, but the average Ivan on the street is not to blame for any of the policies of the Russian government. But it became we had Jack Bauer in 24. Suddenly it became.
I remember that.
But suddenly it became, I'm gonna, tell me where the bomb is, or I'm going to cut your head off, and all this. It became something that was designed to also enforce the idea that certainly the American state can use torture, force, whatever means necessary for the greater good.
Yeah, the greater good is the end justifies the means.
The ends justifies the means. This is about saving lives, and if we break a few eggs in the process.
But even over here, so television shows like Spooks were all just adding to the climate.
You liked Spooks?
I did, but because so the first couple of seasons I liked.
But you see,
they were ridiculous.
No, but you see, I don't know whether it's because, I mean, you work in the tech industry as well, but I just remember hating anything that took the piss out of tech. And it was all flashing lights and stupid noises and all this.
Yeah,
that's not real at all.
Yeah, there were a couple of daft things. I think that was
It was
one
all
where...
daft. Do you remember the one with the firewall and everything?
Well, they hacked in. Yeah, suddenly the lights go off. And, oh no, they're in the inner sanctum.
Diabolical, all of it.
But yeah, but there were some good episodes. There were some really proper gritty episodes.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the main characters got like a head dumped in some boiling oil.
See, I remember that was a real. That was a real. I remember that being on the news. I remember it being this whole, I can't believe the BBC had done this.
Yeah.
All this kind of stuff. And then when I finally saw, I thought this scene, the way it'd been described, I thought it was going to be something out of a horror movie. And I was really disappointed when I finally saw it. And it was all just a kind of, there we go. It wasn't.
Well, I thought it was because they stuck her arm in first.
Yeah.
To try and get her to talk or whatever, and then that didn't work. So they just dunked her head in, and then she was still alive. So they just shoot her in the back of the head.
Yeah.
It's pretty grim.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be even worse than it actually was. But yeah, TV and film and all this, it turned the terrorist into the bad guy, didn't it? I mean, we could talk for hours, couldn't we, about whether it turned the Islamic terrorist into the bad guy or not. That's a whole huge can of worms right there, isn't it? Because nowadays that stuff is kind of airbrushed out a bit, isn't it? In terms of unless it's anti-Islam, unless it's a white supremacist or anything like that, where it's very heavily publicised that this was an Islamophobic attack or whatever. If it's anything religious, it's just kind of left out of the reporting. But that's what the kids of today have grown up with. I've got people who work for me like this. I've got people who work for me now that were born this century. I mean, isn't that depressing?
It's.
And to these people, so for them, the 9/11 attacks were their Falklands. Yeah. You know, they were very young. We were very young. The Falklands War, didn't really get it, but you hear about it later and all this. These people, these adults now. They were 4 or 5 when, or 3 or 4 when the Iraq War happened. They grew up. So this concept of war, you're like, oh well, we've got a war finally. We're at war. Most of the kids now, the ones in their about 20 now, they grew up with us at war. Tony Blair and Bush and us at war. And I just wonder how that does inform your politics of things. I mean, it's an interesting enough relationship anyway, having Blair and Bush, whereas for us it was
Thatcher and Reagan,
and then Bush Senior, obviously as well, before Clinton. So it's very much right wing and right wing, whereas Bush and Blair, you got the complete kind of opposite. I say complete opposite because
kind of right wing and right wing. Yeah,
exactly. But that made it different. But what do you think about how this next generation must be feeling about it? Because for us it was all about you had an ideology that you were at war with. You had the Russians, but there was an ideology there.
Well, it's kind of, like you say, it was the war on kind of communism, I guess.
Yeah. And
now it's the war on terror, which is different because it's all spread about and it's sparse and it's not like Russia, which is like a clear. Well, it was like a clear enemy in China.
A clear and present danger.
Whereas you don't really get that with the war on terror. It's just going back to your point. It's crazy that there are adults now that were born this. That were born this century. I still think of people born
adults.
Yeah, technically they're adults. I mean, I still think of people born in the 80s are young.
Yeah.
So I feel old now.
So where do we go from here? It's been 30 years since the fall of the Berlin Wall. We still remember it. We've now got an election where socialists and out and out Marxists. What McDonald was talking about. I can't remember the word. Did he talk about rehabilitating Marx or something? He used some phrase at the weekend about wanting to. Well, everyone should reread Marx and all this, and you just think, have we not been here before?
Well, so Jeremy Corbyn's #1 advisor, Seamus Mill,
Yeah.
is an out and out Stalinist.
Yeah.
And he's not shy about it.
No.
You know, he's not. He didn't. You know, he's quite open about the fact that he's a Stalin fanboy, and it's so scary. Well, there were talks the other day about Dominic Cummings being a Russian spy. It's like, if anyone's advisor is a Russian spy,
Did you see?
It's going to be Seamus Mill.
Did you see? There's some Twitter parody account of Corbyn. I retweeted
Okay.
it, and it said, "This is outrageous. Dominic Cummings is a Russia spy. I never saw him at any meetings," which I thought was very clever.
Agent Cobb.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. The thing is, all of this stuff's coming out again now. I say coming out again. The usual suspects from the Conservative press and the Conservative MPs, they're all popping up now saying, "Oh, we can't possibly vote in a communist, a Marxist, an IRA sympathiser, a Hamas supporter, yada yada yada." All this stuff's coming out. 2017 election was different. I mean, it was different, and there are factors now where some people who did vote for Labour won't vote for Labour this time. I do believe that.
Well, so all the people who were told, you can vote for me because Jeremy Corbyn won't get in.
Exactly. And now going to be going,
oh,
really?
Hold up a second.
Yeah, exactly. But I suppose the point is, none of those arguments really worked in 2017. So are they going to work again this time? Bringing up all that stuff? I mean, to me, we should be... The government should be holding a special celebration on the fall of the Berlin Wall because it's 30 years. I mean, what an excuse to talk about the end of communism at the beginning of a political campaign, and you get to say, "This is political," and all of that. Invite over the Germans, do all of it, accept every invitation to go over there and celebrate this moment. Because there are people that don't remember it and they need to understand it. Go and interview East Germans and talk to them about this stuff. Let alone talking about interviewing Estonians and Poles and other people that this is very, very recent memory from. When we were born, when we were growing up, the Second World War was there, kind of looming in the distant, not in the not too distant past, and you would meet people and you know people and our grandparents and all this kind of stuff.
But yeah, because
who were in the war, and in fact our parents were basically born at the end of the war, and it didn't feel too far away.
Yeah, because you had old people who were who were veterans of the Second World War, and you had the really old people who were veterans of the First World War.
And now basically they're all gone, and actually you've got to be. You're going to be pretty old even to have been alive in the Second World War. Now that seems proper distant. When you talk about 70 years and all this kind of stuff, then suddenly it seems like a proper long time ago. And to me, the end of the Cold War is starting to feel like that. And so again, people growing up now, it's going to be, oh yeah, well it kind of happened then. Albeit, educationally, people are taught about the Second World War, but I don't think they're really taught about the Cold War.
No,
again, the fact that we didn't really. I mean, all the stuff I've learned about the Cold War, I've got from reading books because I was interested in it, and there were films and things.
Well, I remember reading Tom Clancy like you did,
but then that just spurred me on to go and read non-fiction about this period of time as well, and that's where I picked up this stuff because it was of the fiction of the time.
But if you think about timings as well, so the distance between the Second World War ending and me being born is about the same time as the Cold War ending and now.
That's what I'm saying. That's scary, isn't it? That is scary. Other than us just going, well, we're really old now. It's just a kind of. I think it's important that this memory lives on. We have been very fortunate, and I hope again on the 12th of December that we're very fortunate again not to have a country that has ever really been ruled by socialists or communists. I mean, you can talk about previous Labour administrations that we've had in the last century, but all these other Eastern Bloc countries, that's just what they grew up with: proper communism, proper secret police, proper all of that, no democracy, and they remember it. They remember it. It's why they resist an awful lot of the EU stuff. They're like, no, not us. It's still too fresh. Whereas we don't have that. We have the fights against people like Michael Foot and now Jeremy Corbyn. And it's just kind of accepted that we'll kind of keep them at bay.
One of the differences, though, so the Second World War now, fascism is seen as being this awful, abhorrent ideology, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But so is communism. Communism killed tens of millions of people more than fascism did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay to go on national television and say, "I'm literally a communist." And
That's
fine. I find that so bizarre. I really struggle with that.
I also
imagine if someone went on and said, "I'm literally a fascist."
Yeah.
You'd expect them to be hounded out, to never work again.
Yeah.
Quite rightly.
But
you can.
Well, you can be someone that is invited again and again and again. In the case of Ash Sarkar that you're talking about there on the BBC, she's just on all the time. And it's like, why isn't this person painted in the light that they should be? That's just the time we're living in, I suppose.
The communism is never reached, in spite of the death count.
Yeah.
And even the people who didn't die, the abject misery and poverty that it caused for hundreds of millions of people, it's never been kind of taken to the extent that the fascism has been, which is ridiculous as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. No, there were two great ills of the 20th century, and they were those two ideologies. Exactly, two. Yeah, and there are fundamental differences to them. But these are two massively statist, and I'm gonna just any actual communists listening or watching this, which I doubt there will be, saying no, communism isn't statism, yada yada yada. It's like it's this, because you can't get to the place you want to get to without it, and you'll never get there. So yeah.
On that cheery note, is that a good place to end it?
Probably is. It's been 30 years since the fall of the Berlin Wall, and we should all remember it, and we should all talk about it more, because we don't want anything like that to happen again. Thank you very much for listening to Sounding Board, and for watching us, if you were watching us.
And feel free. So not only can you subscribe now on wherever you get your podcast, but you can subscribe on YouTube as well.
You can
now become a YouTube channel.
One of our subscribers. The link will be in the description.
Can I put it here or?
It might
be. Do you know how to do it? Can you put? Whenever I watch YouTube videos, I see people pointing, and then you get these links.
Right, I can put something about there.
Okay.
And I can put something about there.
Our podcast listeners have no idea what we're doing.
I mean, there might be soundingboard.com might be about there.
Okay.
But that's just because I'm using free software.
Okay. But anyway, so please subscribe,
rate, review, share, all of that stuff. We need more people like you watching and listening.
Thank you very much.